Comet 3I Atlas is back in the spotlight for astronomers and news. After it passed behind the Sun in late October, many were waiting to see if it would come back alive, if it would fall to pieces, if there would be a tail, and most importantly, if it would give a new argument that it was an ordinary interstellar comet, not something artificial. Now, by mid-November of this year, we already have a whole set of fresh facts, from a radio signal to a strange tale to lively arguments of scientists. To begin with, the comet has already returned to our morning sky. After perihelion, it appeared in the constellation Virgo and is now visible before dawn through small telescopes. Visually, it's still faint, about 12th magnitude, meaning it's just a blurred star to the eye, but for astronomers it's alive, active, and still ejects gas and dust. No complete disintegration has occurred, although some early predictions did not rule it out. The biggest news is the first radio signal from 3I Atlas. South Africa's Meerkat radio telescope recently detected radio lines of the hydroxyl radical unassociated with this comet. This is the case when the word radio signal is great at dispersing headlines, but the explanation is as natural as possible. When the ice in a comet evaporates, water molecules break into fragments under the influence of solar ultraviolet radiation, including xenon. These molecules absorb radio waves at specific frequencies, and the radio telescope sees a characteristic pattern in the spectrum. What Meerkat saw was a classic water-ice signature. And here's the interesting thing. In recent days, several materials have appeared at once, where they write that this radio signal actually closes the question of alien origin. The argument is simple. The behavior of water, the presence of xenon, the shape of spectral lines, all perfectly match what we see in ordinary comets. There's no sign of artificial communication, modulation, clear transmissions, or anything else. That is, the radio data right now is one of the strongest arguments for 3I Atlas being a natural interstellar comet. But the story does not end there, because there is an opposite, more provocative voice in parallel. Avi Loeb, who has been promoting the idea that some interstellar objects may be man-made for years, has released a new article and several interviews just in recent days. He points out that 3I Atlas survived a close pass near the Sun without breaking up, although some scientists estimated that it would have been more severe. The post-perihelion photos show that the object remains one whole core, not a cloud of debris. At the same time, the comet has already managed to lose a significant amount of mass due to evaporation, but still holds its shape. Loeb draws a bold conclusion from this. For an object to remain intact in such evaporation and such flows of gas, it either must have a very unusual structure, or we miscount energy and mass. He even floats the idea that some jets of gas that we see as jets in photos can be interpreted as something like engines or nozzles, based on an artificial scenario. He was especially hooked by the presence of an anti-tail, a sun-oriented component of dust that seems to stretch not from the sun, but towards it. This happens in ordinary comets, but in combination with interstellar origin, it certainly provides fodder for fantasy. So we have an interesting situation right now. Some articles directly write radio signal proved it's an ordinary comet. Others, the new observations raise the question of whether she's acting too strange after perihelion. In parallel, there are very recent reports of the 3I Atlas tail. After she came out from behind the Sun, she was actively photographed by both professionals and experienced amateurs in Europe. In the new pictures, the tail looks increasingly complex and extended. There is talk of multiple jets, a possible anti-tail, and constant changes in structure literally from night to night. In one set of shots, the tail appears ragged with a few rays. In another, a new detail appears oriented closer to the direction of the Sun. For astronomers, it is a sign that the comet is now in a phase of strong and uneven activity. There may be areas on its surface where ice and dust are ejected particularly powerfully, forming directional jets. Plus, the solar wind and the magnetic field add their own. They can arch the ion tail, form additional structures, and break its visible shape. Amid the discussion of the tail and the radio signal, the story of the orbit and the maneuver after perihelion also continues to develop. A very recent review in the news highlights. New data show that 3I Atlas remains a single body, but the changing trajectory and nature of the jets of gas are forcing some researchers to reconsider calculations on non-gravitational accelerations. The style of wording sounds, "The comet's post-perihelion behavior looks unusual and requires additional analysis by energetics, by energy input, by the real volume of evaporating mass." There's a new round of questions around this. Are there enough natural explanations? Or is there still room for something unnatural? It's important to understand that even those who write about impossible energy expenditure usually do not say directly, "It's definitely a ship." Rather, we see an anomaly, and either we don't understand something about the physics of this object, or we need to consider exotic options. A separate fresh line is spacecraft. Last week, China's Tianwen-1 probe already lit up with new images of 3I Atlas from the orbit of Mars, and these images are actively quoted in both scientific news and in the popular press. The comet on them looks like a bright nucleus with a large coma, taken from an angle that cannot be obtained from Earth. At the same time, there is an ongoing mini-drama surrounding NASA and their Mars reconnaissance orbiter. The HiRISE camera has already taken images of 3I Atlas as it flew by Mars, but the images themselves have not yet been officially released. Last week, there were articles directly accusing NASA of delaying the publication of this data, when it would be possible, as usual, to post at least 1 or 2 demonstration pictures. New comments have surfaced today that these pictures are expected to be published within the coming days, but there is still no exact date. The result is a curious race. China has already shown its pictures and even animations. Europeans, through the ESA, are actively talking about how they use data from their Martian orbiters, and American high-rise footage still remains behind the curtain, easily building a suspicious atmosphere around it, especially amid talk of the object's alien nature. Another fresh block is information from the ESA. Just the other day, the European Space Agency officially announced that, using data from the trace gas orbiter on Mars, they managed to refine the trajectory of 3I Atlas tenfold. This means that we now know much better exactly where the comet is and how it will move forward. To the viewer, it just sounds like an orbital improvement, but it's actually a fundamental thing. The more accurate the trajectory, the better we can then try to find the native star from whose system this object once flew. And the better we prepare for future guests, honing techniques so that next time we might even have time to send a mission towards them. Finally, what is important for ordinary observers? According to the most recent data, 3I Atlas is now visible in the morning sky above the horizon in the constellation Virgo, and will remain available for observation until at least the spring of 2026. For the naked eye, it's too dim, but for amateurs with telescopes, it's a chance to see a real interstellar object with their own eyes. At the same time, it has already passed the point of closest approach to the Sun and will now gradually move away, although it will still remain active in the coming months. If you put it all together briefly into one picture, the latest news is the comet has successfully survived perihelion and remains intact. Its tail grows and becomes more complex, anti-tails and jets appear. The Meerkat radio telescope for the first time caught a radio signal from it that confirms ordinary comet water. Some scientists continue to promote the idea of anomalous behavior and possible artificial explanations. ESA refined the trajectory with a Mars vehicle. China's Tianwen-1 has already shown its images, and NASA is still dragging its feet on releasing the HiRISE images. The scientific consensus is that 3I Atlas is a natural interstellar comet with very unusual activity, not a deadly alien probe, but it is the combination of interstellar origins, a strange tale, unusual survival after the Sun, and loud comments from famous astrophysicists that makes it the perfect subject for a video. Real data, fresh news, and just enough mysteries for the viewer to watch to the end.